Thank you guys all for joining this session. This is going to be a less, we're not going to be focusing so much on the technology itself, but much more what we see going on around the technology of application services. And we welcome questions at any point, so please feel free to just ask. So Francois shared a little bit yesterday about the evolution of application services. Right? And you got a bit of the historical context there. I think he went back 5,000 years to the dawn of trade and human civilization. But when we focus in on how this has evolved, right, we talked about the transition from physical capital into human capital, and now we believe we are on the cusp of the era of application capital. Now, when we say application capital, what that means is that we see a number of companies out there who are predominantly basing the source of their value creation and their, for all intents and purposes, their market cap on the application portfolio that they have. Who in this room is taking on some sort of digital transformation initiative? All right, come on, guys, I know you're lying. Raise your hand if you're taking on a digital transformation initiative. It's a little bit better. And in the digital transformation initiative, what is one of the primary outputs of your digital transformation efforts? It's a bunch of applications, yeah? You have applications that you need to basically engage with your customers in different ways, so you're standing up new customer-facing things. You have applications that you need to automate different parts of your business operation. You have other applications that are getting stood up to interface with your supplier network and your partners. Basically, this is netting out into a ton of new applications. And many of those applications are adding incrementally to the value of your company. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about application capital. And that's why we say that the value of the modern enterprise is actually going to reside in its applications. Now that's a super, super cool history, or a super cool belief. It's something that I'm very passionate about as a technologist. It's also very scary, because if you overlay Sarah's presentation yesterday, she talked about all of the different vectors of attack on these applications. And that when you look at cyber threats in our research, 53% of applications, or I'm sorry, 53% of cyber threat is coming in through the application door. That means that we are all going to be at greater risk because the applications are proliferating. They're proliferating not in places that are under our control often, but much more often in places that are out of our control. And there's a lot more places that attackers can get in. Now, when I talk about an application and when our team talks about an application, we're talking about a program which is specifically designed to perform a function either for an end user or for another application. And I'm going to use the term application and workload fairly interchangeably. Workload technically means something that sits on a bare metal server. It could be a virtual machine, or it could be a single container. And an application could be one or more of any of those things. And so they're not quite the same thing, but just go with me in terms of simplifying the semantics here. So just think about all of these as your applications. And those things, like I said, are proliferating very quickly. In large part because a ton of companies are pouring a ton of resources and time and energy and money into their digital transformations, and that's driving the growth of these workloads. So we're seeing 50% growth per year. That's growing faster than the rate of data, right? Data's projected to grow at 40%. And then when we think about application services, one analogy, I haven't found the best analogy for application services, but it's kind of like the clothing you dress your applications in, right? Every application needs some kind of service. That service is going to look different depending on what the application needs to do, the kind of data that it needs to have. But there's a bunch of these different services. So there's things that do global load balancing, redirecting to different data centers based on which location you want to send the traffic to. There's stuff that does the local traffic management, which is redirecting to a specific server, depending usually on how overloaded one or another is. There's basic firewalling. There's the web application firewall, which addresses more the traffic flow and what's happening in layer 7. There's identity and access in terms of preventing specific people from gaining access to characteristics or properties of the application. All of these are L4 through L7 services, and all of these are what F5 refers to as application services. Whoops. That was a, oh. So when we talk about what's going on with digital transformation, there's a lot of changes that are going on in the way that we think about applications. So this is just some research that we've done in the last year as part of our state of application delivery research. And what our customers tell us is about 4,000 people from across the globe answer this survey on a regular basis. Basically, they say that digital transformation is changing fundamentally the way that they develop applications. It means that they're changing how they deploy. Specifically, they're using a lot more automation and orchestration, because when you have to manage thousands of things, it looks a lot different from when you're only managing 100. And it also means that they're changing the way that they're delivering applications, right? There's a lot more applications that are going in, or that are being delivered out of the public cloud now, as opposed to private data centers. And that also means that the number of application services that people are tagging onto their applications is on the rise. And so again, this is a question that we ask every year in this survey, and it's basically an open, in some cases we offer a pick list of what application services are you using, and then we offer the ability for them to name other ones that we haven't listed. The list keeps growing. And so you can think of it as people are increasingly accessorizing their applications. And the things that we hear that people want the most in terms of what are the most popular ones, we've got a lot focused on application acceleration. That's where you'd bucket things like GSLB. There's a lot focused on web application firewall in terms of providing basic protection of each application at the layer 7. Load balancing is an important one, TCP optimization, and caching. Now, that's just a little bit of an overview of what are applications, how fast are they growing, what are the application services that people are thinking about, and how do they want to attach those to the applications. I want to go back to the historical context and think about how have we been managing capital in the past. And let's take an example like Boeing, okay? So let's all put on our Boeing hat and pretend that we're a very large industrial manufacturer of airplanes and jets, et cetera. Does Boeing know where all of their factories are? Okay. Does Boeing know where all their airplanes are? The answer is yes, they do. And Boeing orchestrates basically thousands of suppliers, right, in order to make a single jet airplane, right? Now, if you take that model and that sophistication in terms of what they've applied in managing what I call their physical capital in order to drive a very effective supply chain and manage the assets that they have in their business, let's pretend that Boeing is best in class at this, and I'll go to a human capital example in a second. So that's best in class for physical capital. We'll put them at a 10, okay? Let's pick another example, UPS, okay? UPS has 100,000+ people in their employment, right? And this diverse network around the world of warehouses and logistics. And UPS is actually really, really good at managing their human capital. This was something I learned doing a case study on them a couple years ago. UPS actually has such granular information on their delivery network that they're able to prescribe to their drivers how to get into their trucks and then get out of their trucks in order to save time and reduce injuries. It's amazing. It's very scary and disturbing, and I'd never work for them, but it's pretty amazing. So let's put that on the scale of 0 to 10. That's a 10 in terms of management of human capital. Where do we think that most companies are in terms of management of application capital? 2. What makes you think a 2? Okay, we heard a 1. What was your reason?
Most customers don't know how their application behaves.
Does anybody think it's more than 4? Okay, so think about that for just a moment. We're moving, if you believe the premise, and if you don't believe the premise, let me know. I'm very eager to hear your perspective. If you believe the premise that digital transformation is a secular shift and it's applicable to all industries, that's thing number 1. Secondly, as part of digital transformation, that transitions the value of companies to their applications. Okay, that's the second premise. And then the third one is we're nowhere close to any level of sophistication or rigor in managing that application capital. What is the implication here? Dumpster fire is
Yeah,
a better word.
yeah, that is. You need a fire extinguisher for sure right now.
So a couple examples here, right? And Sarah talked yesterday about how the average, she said the average enterprise has about 800 applications. And I'm not sure, I'm always very skeptical of numbers like that because A, you have to ask, well, what is an average enterprise? And B, I've never spoken to anybody that knows how many applications they have. Now they know rough order of magnitude. Hitesh and I were just in another room where a gentleman was quite confident they had at least 7,000. I've met with a few banks who are quite confident they have upwards of 10,000. And so we know that there are a lot of them out there. And if you look at industry analysts, right, Francois shared the 250 million workload number yesterday. And so we have some bottoms-up estimate of at least the bare metal servers, the virtual machines, and the containers. Okay, so we have some rough approximation of that. But we also talked about in the research yesterday that roughly a third of those, on average, are considered mission critical. Does that resonate with you guys in terms of your own portfolios? I don't think that matters, okay? Mission critical in this world is a distinction of the past. Why? Who is familiar with the Target example? What happened in Target 4 years ago? Do you want to share? So Target, yes. Yes, so Target lost millions of customer records through their point of sale system. However, how did the hackers get to the point of sale system? Yes. Why did the air conditioning vendor need access to the network of Target? Because they were using digital monitoring of their HVAC systems. There's an HVAC application that they needed access to in order to make tweaks, and that exposed Target. Is the HVAC system in a Target store a mission-critical application? No, it's not. Come on, you're from Europe. You don't care about air conditioning. Okay, fine. I'll go to another example. Okay? Here's another example. Casino operator, right? 2 years ago. Who's familiar with this one? Hitesh just heard me talk about this one. All right. Casino operator loses their high roller database. Is that important to a casino operator? Okay. Guess how they got it? Hackers hacked in through the digital thermometer in the lobby aquarium. Now, I challenge you to talk to me about why that is mission critical.
You buy us some dead fish.
It's fission critical.
Nice. That's going in the notes. That's good.
Hitesh is a big advocate of dad jokes.
Oh, absolutely. Makes
which are a
everybody-
subset of pun jokes.
Yes.
Another example, Facebook. Facebook application, yeah, mission. That one I will guarantee you is mission critical, right? So, and it's a mission critical application that I think Francois used in his example yesterday. It's worth more than $500 billion. That one is super important, and that one is one where we saw them lose $120 billion. Why? Because they weren't protecting the data and they weren't protecting their application properly. So a best-in-class digital leader, their mission-critical application, worth over $500 billion, and because they weren't protecting it, they lost $120 billion in one day. All right, so does anyone in the room have a counter perspective here? Okay. So here's the landscape that we're dealing with. We've got a lot of customers or a lot of applications out there, and those applications are increasingly landing in different places, right? If you add up all these numbers, it's close to 90% of our customers, actually here it is, just subtract the 13. 87% of our customers are using more than one environment. And this is another number that we look at consistently in our state of application delivery research. Year after year, we ask them, how many different cloud providers are you using? And again, just like application services numbers keep going up, the number of cloud providers that customers are using also keeps going up, okay? So it's not in a state where we're now converging back down to these huge mega clouds. What we're actually seeing is a proliferation of these environments, and customers are placing their apps in different places. And then the important thing here is another question we ask our customers is, well, how do you decide which environment you put your app in? And oftentimes what we hear, 56%, say that they're choosing the cloud based on the application, right? Like, I'll make an example here. I pick Google because Google has lower prices in their storage, and I want to run my particular advanced analytics and big data over in Google. I'm going to use Amazon because Amazon has the best integrations with Red Hat, and I need to be taking advantage of a bunch of Red Hat specific stuff up there. I might use Azure because the application is really close to the collaboration and communication systems that my company runs on, and so it makes sense for this one to go over there. Familiar to anybody? Okay. And that makes a lot of sense, right? But the problem when you end up doing that is you start getting a bunch of different, you have your application sitting in different places. In some cases, they're taking advantage of the native properties of each of those systems, and you start having a bunch of different systems that you have to manage differently, which is what we say is the value proposition of having a much more consistent layer. And so some of the advice that we have been giving to customers to solve this application sprawl dilemma and the threat, both the opportunity and the threat that we see around this whole concept of application capital is threefold. So the first thing is focus your developers on differentiation. We have a lot of customers that, not a lot, but we run into, Hitesh works with a lot of our customers that are doing bespoke things. And a lot of what he focuses on is convincing them that they don't need to do bespoke things as much because we've made it easier. And not from a perspective of buy our product instead. A lot of the stuff Hitesh does doesn't make any money. But, sorry.
It's good career trajectory.
It's not intended to. It's intended to make your lives easier and make it easier for you guys to operate the stuff that does actually make money for F5. So we find a lot of situations where developers, because developers are developers, like to reinvent the wheel. And they will be building some basic application services for themselves because they think it's cool. They don't want to reuse or figure out how to access a library. And so our advice here is make sure that your developers are aware of what application services are and what libraries and capabilities they have to use, and focus them on driving differentiation through actual business logic and things that matter to your customer, and not things that are the back plumbing, okay? So that's the first thing. Do you want to share any example on that one?
Yeah, so I actually link this, we say this internally quite a bit. We have to focus on our core competency, right? So is the core competency of a developer figuring out how to scale the application when it's in production? No. That's an infrastructure thing, right? But any time that a developer puts into and invests in that is time that was taken away from something that they should be working on to generate revenue for your company, right? That balance, it's out of whack right now. In fact, it's horribly out of whack right now. Developers are spending too much time doing things that we could deliver very easily, and we can actually deliver it for less costs. Or maybe you may have to buy something, right? We have a commercial solution, fine. But the thing is, the cost of the commercial solution is almost always less than the cost of that human capital. Okay, so that's where app services come in, and when we're talking to developers, we say, look, we want to let you focus on what actually is driving innovation for your company, for your customers, rather than doing all the other stuff that should be delivered from infrastructure. It got this way because, frankly, infrastructure has lagged. Okay? It didn't happen by accident. It happened because app teams were moving fast. We saw a huge shift to Agile. Agile created DevOps, and DevOps created value for a business. And the leaders said, do that. Does anyone think that shadow IT is actually shadow IT? Shadow IT sanctioned chaos from my talk yesterday. Shadow IT was funded by a leader that knew exactly where the money was going. It wasn't shadow at all. It was just shadow from you, right? But the reason it happened is because there was value being generated there, and now that's coming into the fold, right? We're trying to normalize that. We're trying to say, all right, you've got to rein in that chaos a little bit. So that's the focus for us when we talk about application services. Make sure that your developers have a chance to focus on their core competency, which is delivering value for the business. The infrastructure teams should be delivering their value to the business by allowing scale, by allowing security, and all of those things as part of that application.
And the implication, who here is more of a NetOps person? No? Okay, what do you guys do for your companies? I'll go at it that way. Okay. Okay, excellent. Infrastructure automation, others? Network? Okay. Anyone else? Sir?
Helping our customers build solutions with our product.
Okay.
Actually, a partner.
Okay. Are there any developers in the room? Okay. Do you guys want to be fussing around with the application services? No? Okay. Do you feel like you're getting what you need from your network and security teams in order not to have to fuss around with the application services?
It's what is it? The 12 steps, right? The first step is admitting you have a problem. Remember, at best in this room, we're at a 2. I want to bring that up again. You have to admit that there's a problem here, and there's a path through it. But we were at a 2, 20 minutes ago. You asked this earlier. Where are your kids right now? You have an idea of where they are, right?
Yeah, you guys, okay, who has kids? Raise your hand. Okay, keep your hand up. If you wait. Yes. If you know precisely where your kids are, put your hand down. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, if you know vaguely where your kids are, put your head down.
Well, the more fundamental question is, how many kids do you have? Do you know that? Right? I think we're at that level. Do you have children? Yes. How many do you have? I have 2. Hi, my name is Satish. I have 2 children that I know of.
And do you know where they are?
And I know where they are right now. Okay, so I have fulfilled that adult checkbox.
Now, this is relevant because.
It's relevant because, okay, so there is a issue. We know it. The data shows this, right?
I'm going to tie this back to applications.
And we just have to admit that we can use app services. You're developers, right? Talk to each other, right? We have something of value. You have something of value. We need to link those together to innovate. That's the point.
Okay, I'll go back and connect the dots on that one. And I know this is a reach, and this is coming from a person that does not have children, so just bear with me. But we just talked about how important applications are to the enterprise. Applications are the future of many of your companies. They are your legacy. In many ways, they are your children. So if you know where your children are, why do you not know where your applications are? Why do you not even know how many applications you have? Would you feel okay about raising your children at the level of a 2 in terms of understanding their activity? Probably not.
None of us have 5,000 children.
Fair.
Well, that you know of.
Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because I already spoke about it. This was the first piece of advice, which is get your developers focused on the things where they're adding value. Second piece of advice is choose the best infrastructure for the application. And so we already talked about this. Some of you are already implementing this. We absolutely encourage you to continue doing that. That only makes sense, right? So there's not an answer where you say we got to keep everything in our own data center because that's the only place where we can secure it. I also don't think there's an answer where you say, we're going to standardize everything on a public cloud because it's the easiest way for us to secure that, because that just stifles innovation and it makes it very difficult for you to move with the speed that you need to. This is probably my favorite piece of advice. And I find this one is important, and I'll be upfront. This is the one that's the most self-serving for F5. I'll be upfront about that one, but I'll talk about why it's important. If you have a bunch of applications, we all admit the applications are important, and those applications are going in a bunch of different places, right? And you already have very little visibility of those applications. And by the way, the entire portfolio of applications matters, not just a subset, okay? That's everything that we've talked about so far. If you believe that is a problem, and I think we've already established that we have a problem, then the way to solve that problem, or the F5 suggested solution for that problem, is to use consistent set of application services on those applications. And when I say consistent, I'm not saying the same, right? We're not saying take big IP and apply big IP on everything, because that would not be great. Your developers would hate you, and you'd be basically as stuck as if you just decided to put everything on-prem. But what we are saying is that you should be equipping or dressing all of your applications with some set of application services at the bare minimum to give visibility and monitoring capability to those applications. And I personally believe that every application should have a WAF, just given the vulnerabilities that they are subject to. And similarly, you should have an ability within your portfolio to say, I want to apply gold level security. And that might mean something for your most mission critical important applications, where it's the 3,500 rules that you end up applying as part of your big IP WAF. And gold on the rest of your applications might look different, but you do need some central point that says, I want gold security on all of these applications. Okay, so that's why that is important. If you're going around in a multi-cloud world and you're not using consistent application services, you're going to have all of these problems of inconsistent security policies, no visibility, threats, all of your applications or many of your applications under threat, and you're not going to be able to optimize. So these are some of the challenges, just to back this up with a little bit of research. And again, some of this was in Francois' keynote yesterday. This is the same survey that we run every year, and we ask our customers, what happens when you start adopting multiple clouds? And 42% come back saying, I can't apply a consistent security policy, even for the applications that I'm aware of. Okay? Because, for example, who here has used WAF in AWS? Okay, how many WAF rules does AWS allow? No idea. It's 50. How many WAF rules do we have in Big IP?
Thousands.
3,500.
Yep.
We were doing the math. AWS covers 14% of the WAF rules in Big IP, and basically you guys are the ones holding the bag saying, I have to do the translation between the 3,500 into the 50. Right? That's problematic.
1.4%.
Oh.
0.014.
My bad.
There you go.
Second one. That's just the applications that you know about that you're able to say we want WAF, okay? We all know that there's a ton of applications that you don't know about that also don't likely have WAF, which means those applications, like the Lobby Aquarium, are under threat. And when that's under threat, if it's accessing your core network, everything is under threat, right? The HVAC system is connected to the point of sale system. Then you get into optimizing performance of applications, right? And when we talk about optimizing performance of applications, that can mean many things, right? In the traditional networking world around load balancing and GSLB, what that meant was just serving up the app faster and routing the traffic to the place that could deliver it best to the user. It's the same thing, but I want you to put on the lens of digital transformation and customer experience, right? Which is, these days, if you're engaging with your customers through an application, one of the most important things to the success of that application is that the user experience is solid. And the leading driver of user experience is speed and responsiveness. So if you're not able to pinpoint where in your network your application is sputtering or having trouble, that is very, very difficult to optimize. All right? And so that's what I talk about when I talk about optimizing the performance of applications. It's really about how do you make your end user experience sing. And then the last thing, this is the most basic one, and this is where the analogy with children comes in, is just getting basic visibility into your application portfolio, knowing how many applications you have and where they are and whether or not they're covered with some sort of protection, right? That is like the most basic thing. If you can solve for that one, many of these other things start getting easier. So just to summarize, the advice we have to get out of this morass of application challenges and how to better optimize and secure your application capital. First one is get your developers focused on what they should be doing, which is driving value for your business and not trying to reinvent what's going on in the infrastructure stack. And you do that as network engineers or network operations professionals by providing them with the tools that they need to do that. The second one here is allow your businesses and your teams to choose the best infrastructure for the application. This is no longer something that IT organizations are able to dictate. That is a thing of the past, and it's not coming back. But what you do have control over and what you can do is apply consistent services to your application portfolio. And you apply it with the lens of saying, guys, we recognize that application capital is where we're going. That is the value that we're going to create in the future. We want to protect and preserve that as much as possible, and that is the solution. So just to wrap up, and then we'll take some questions or some discussion. We at F5 firmly believe that the value of the modern enterprise is sitting in the applications. I hope through the sessions yesterday and through this discussion here, we've helped explain at least where that belief comes from. We very much welcome your challenges and conversation about that. We think this is a problem that not enough people are engaging in, which is shocking to me because we live in the United States where Facebook's own application management problems had enormous impact on all of us. And so I think this is a conversation not just of relevance to F5, but really of relevance to everybody. So thank you. Questions? We'll also take opinions.
What are some thoughts on how customers could go about identifying what kind of sprawl they are seeing in terms of application sprawl first of all, and then particularly application services sprawl? Are there any recommendations that you have or tools that you would recommend?
Yeah, unfortunately, you have to brute force it. So it starts with setting that out as an objective, which is, guys, this is an important priority for our business. We need to get a hold of what's going on with these applications, and then you just have to start the counting exercise. It's no different from what you would do if you inherited a zoo and you needed to take an inventory of the animals, right? We've got tigers over there. We've got some lions.
The capability exists. I mean, if you're in a company, most of us have an asset tag on our computer, right? IT knows how many laptops F5 has in the field and where they are right now. They know because we have little asset tags. This capability exists. It's just a muscle that we haven't exercised at all, right? We haven't said this is part of our business. We haven't said this is critical to us. So you brute force. Everyone knows what a network scanner is, right? Go run Nmap on your network. And I did this early in my career. I walked into that raging dumpster fire thing from yesterday, the spaghetti monster. I walked into a situation like that. And Kara's right. There is no making sense of it. You brute force it, and then you just say, all right, by September, we're going to fix 10% of this. By November, we're going to fix 25%. There's just no other way to do it. There's no single technology tool. And by the way, if anyone tries to sell you that single technology tool, they don't know the scope of the problem, right? It's not something that's solvable by me coming in and selling you a thing. It's something that you have to participate in. We certainly have tools that can help, but it's bigger problem than just F5, I would say.
Yeah, and just I skipped out this part. Who's seen this page from us so far? A few people. Okay, I didn't want to cover it because I figured many of you had already seen it, but at least the way F5 is addressing this is And we took the very hard step of basically saying a company that's for 22 years been a single platform company with big IP, we are going to have, going forward, 3 platforms, right? And that's a big change for us, right? So we'll have big IP, and just to orient you, this represents basically our customers' application portfolio, ordered from 0 to 100 in terms of most mission critical over here, and the booking system for your meeting rooms over here. And so we'll have big IP, which will cover and continue to cover your most important applications. We're not requesting that anybody move off of that or migrate, but we have a new platform that we're going to be making available next year. It's around cloud native application services. Francois talked about this yesterday, and I'll share more in the keynote later. And that one is intended to address the applications specifically that your DevOps teams are standing up. It gives them very lightweight services that integrate directly into their tool chains so that there's very little burden for developers to start actually using IT and corporate prescribed application services. And then we'll have F5 as a service available for consumption of application services as a service. It'll be available as SaaS. So that's at least, we're providing a portfolio, and the problem that we've been just talking about for the last 30 minutes is precisely the value proposition that we're targeting with this portfolio.
So in terms of kind of the cloud native app services, I'm trying to tie back to the third point, use consistent application services across your portfolio. And then, for example, the 50 WAF rules in AWS versus 3,500 plus on Big IP. As a customer, for example, I'm a full disclosure, I'm a partner with Cisco, but I'm more interested in how this integrates with the ecosystem in general. Like, how do you work, and not just with AWS or Azure, Google Cloud, or on-prem customers, to make application services kind of consistent across these portfolio when you're limited by all of this? Because so far, I'm trying to understand where F5's direction is.
Yep. Right. So there's a couple of things we have to do there. For the first thing to solve for is making it so that when we're integrating with ecosystems, the order of magnitude of the problem, right? It used to be that F5 and many vendors, okay, not just F5, we could do 10, 20 partners and we're good. The problem I'm solving for specifically is in about 2 years, I have to integrate with probably 1,000, right? So if you look at this graph and you flip it the other way, that's the problem that we're solving for. So the way you do that, first of all, is we have a very big focus in the automation orchestration area on abstraction, right? And fundamentally, abstraction is different than scripting and templating. Lori talked about that yesterday in her keynote. Abstraction, what it allows us to do is deliver the value, deliver a very complex thing in a very simple manner. So AWS is doing this right now. Public cloud is doing this right now. Do you go in and the fundamental core of their business is built on I can get a server running and it can do a thing, right? They've abstracted away all the infrastructure from you so you can get to what you're doing. We're applying that same thing to another stack now. So let's say AWS kind of solve for layer 1 through 3, right? You've got a thing that could do something. And then you're building your application on that instance. That's your layer 4 through 7. We're also doing the same thing. We're going through and saying, all right, that layer 4 through 7, that application service has to be abstracted. So when I talk about the 3,500 rules, that's great and that's a good number. But what's more important is what portion of those rules are relevant for the application you're trying to stand up, and more importantly, how, as a partner, how can you get access to those 3,500 or whatever subset that are relevant in the easiest possible manner. So we have a simple thought experiment that we use internally. And the thought experiment is, if we can't ship our most complicated use case, and I'm not really, I mean, we have to do load balancing. We get that. We've been doing that. We know how to solve for that, right? I'm fundamentally more interested in very complex services. Take access, take WAF, take load balancing, GSLB, and put all those together in one thing, because those are all application services you need, and then deliver that with an integration in less than 1,000 lines of code that we have to write to make it work. And we do this thought experiment for a reason, because if it doesn't get to that number, then we can't solve for that 1,000 partners, right? We can't, so that's the ecosystem out there. And it's going to be a big mashup of all of it. There's an example of this, if you're interested in this. The best example of this right now is probably Kubernetes. So has anyone used Kubernetes or is using Kubernetes right now? Okay. Kubernetes is probably further down this path than almost anyone right now in their way that they're doing things and actually getting it right. And I will say that we are looking at that model. We've looked at a lot of things, and we've created some stuff on our own too. But we're looking at that model to make sure that when we're integrating with people, you can do it in a lightweight way. So for an example, when you're doing 20 partners, you can write 50,000 lines of code for that integration, right? There is code behind these things. But that works when you've only got 10 partners. It doesn't work when you've got 1,000. It's really simple math. So reduce the number of lines, we abstract the application services we offer, and then we enable that integration very quickly. Okay? And by the way, most of this, in fact, anything my team ships by nature is open source. Right? So I would say the best part is this. Andrew McAfee talked about it yesterday. The best way to get to where you want to now that exists in the history of humans is to use the crowd. You're the crowd. So if I'm not open sourcing and I'm not allowing you to see what we're doing and getting it out as fast as we can, then I can't use the crowd to influence where we go and what we need to do. Okay? So that's a little bit of it. We can talk more specifically if you'd like to. Would that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Second part that would come from me is like when this is from the F5 view, but F5 is a component
Yeah.
within a very complex ecosystem.
Yes.
You have firewalls, you have switches, routers,
Sure.
all of these things. So and I know that, I mean, even us as this company from Cisco, we're trying to make that consistent. We have the same message of how to make consistent user experience and application policy
Yep.
across on-prem and cloud. So I'm just kind of seeing where there are synergies there, but at the same time, how you're solving that problem. Because again, we are one component.
Yep.
There's many things, and then when you insert L407 services, I mean, how is it intact for a company that does L407 services? I know it's difficult and it can get very complex. So I just want to see how you have that consistent application services with firewalls,
Yep.
load balancers, and other characteristics.
Yeah.
To fully deploy them.
Well, the simple answer is we make a firewall product, so just buy our firewall.
No. The one-word answer is abstraction.
Yeah, and it's abstraction applied across. So this has to be solved by the industry. We are doing it, and we're talking about it, and we're open sourcing it. And to be honest with you, other vendors have to jump on this. The ecosystem that was created in Kubernetes and OpenStack and all of that side of it, they've already figured this out, by the way. This is not something new. That side of the world already figured it out. Your app devs have already figured it out. The reason C++ exists is because of abstraction. It's not something new. It just hasn't been applied on the infrastructure side. So I would implore, if you're working with other vendors, to push them and challenge them and say, guys, we're seeing this from F5, and I want to deliver on it, so I'll make good on that promise, right? But tell them you have to abstract, you have to make this simpler. And simpler doesn't mean cutting down functionality. This is the biggest misnomer about abstraction, is that it makes it something that's kind of just very easy. Abstraction is really hard to do. You have to invest in it. And if you do it right, you can do very complex things in a very simple manner, and you can integrate easily that way.
Other questions or comments?
When you were talking about application services and deploying it in a consistent manner, what do you see in the industry where, that the reason why many companies don't know how many applications they have, when you have to come in, in a legacy case, right? In my company's case, we acquired another company.
Yeah, you did.
Applications come in through those paths, and they were not configured in a consistent way. So when you want to go forward with a consistent way of doing things, how do you bring in all these disparate things that you already have in the portfolio?
So again, it goes back to applying. It's the same principles that we apply in the realm of physical and human capital. So this gentleman's from Bank of America. So yes, you have purchased a lot of banks. When you guys went through the integration planning, right? I assume you guys didn't lose any humans. No. I mean, sorry. Meaning, let me clarify what I meant by that. Meaning, there was a Workday system over here. Somebody else had some other HR system of record, and you guys knew the disposition. Sorry for using that word, but you knew the disposition of all humans involved in all of the companies that were acquired.
Yep.
Yeah? Why aren't we doing the same thing for applications?
Maybe because I think the applications are created on specific requirements in different scenarios, and not in many scenarios you can take the time to look at all the fundamental requirements of individual applications and try to bring them together. So you continue to run with two systems in many cases where you have, I don't know, 80% overlap in requirements, the 20% remaining doesn't allow you to.
Right, but we're not talking about rationalization, right? Because again, in the realm of human capital, right, that would be called a redundancy, right? And oftentimes those exist when companies merge, but at least you know there is a person here doing that, and there's another person over here doing the same thing. In the realm of applications, in many cases, nobody knows that, right? And so for me, I don't think this is a. I don't think there's a fundamental principle of applications which makes it impossible for us to do that. I think it's just a matter of focus and prioritization, right? It's a matter of recognizing that much like physical capital, much like human capital, applications are things that will have to be managed at a portfolio level, and therefore we're going to have to put certain rigor around managing them. And so the reason why aren't we doing that now is a question of maturity. Okay. Well, Hitesh and I are here all day. If you guys want to have a more one-on-one conversation, we won't hold you any longer. Thank you guys for joining.
Thank you.